And we're back now with the new chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, California Republican Devin Nunes. He joins us for his first Sunday show interview since becoming chairman. We want to welcome you, Mr. Chairman. Let's just talk a little bit about this raid that took place over the weekend. U.S. Special Forces went into Syria, apparently killed a fairly significant ISIS leader, got out without any Americans being killed. Flesh it out for us. What do you know?
Well, many of us have been advocating this strategy for a long time, or using this tactic, because it's just a better way to gather intelligence versus just airstrikes. So it takes guts for the administration and our military to put a action like this together. It was successful. We're happy that they got back safely. Now, over the coming weeks, we'll know what they were actually able to gather there.
What do you? I hear they may have gotten computers, phones. How significant would that
Well,
be?
this target was known as the accountant for ISIS. So hopefully, one would assume there would be a lot of intelligence at his hideout.
He was the one, as I understand it, who was brokering sales of oil.
Of oil, and so you would want to know what he's doing, because you would want to know how they're bringing in money, moving money, and then spreading it out to the organization.
You are just coming to the chairmanship of this committee. What's your first impression? How are we doing in this fight against ISIS?
Well, I think it's important for people to know, first off, that ISIS I describe as Al-Qaeda 6.0, which is what Ambassador Crocker defined ISIS as. Really the sixth generation of Al-Qaeda. The problem that we have now, I think the American people need to understand, and the administration needs to get a better grasp of, is ISIS is not in just Iraq and Syria. So if your strategy is to degrade and ultimately defeat ISIS, and you're not looking at the broader picture of places like North Africa, Libya, essentially what you have is a containment strategy, not an effort to degrade and defeat ISIS. And I say that because you have many of the fighters we know are coming from North Africa. And if you don't stop that flow of fighters, plus the flow of fighters from the West that are coming down in through Turkey, getting trained and then coming out to the West, you're going to have an ever-increasing terrorist threat for the United States and our allies.
Well, do you feel we're making progress here, or are we losing?
I think we are containing ISIS within the borders of Iraq and Syria. Outside of that, we're not doing much.
On Wednesday, you sent a letter to the president warning that the 5 Taliban who were released from Gitmo as a prisoner exchange for Boy Bergdahl last summer are due to be released from confinement in Qatar. Are you concerned about that?
Yeah, so what we explained to the president was on June 1st, so we're less than 2 weeks away from guys who we know. And what I said in the letter is we know they are in communications with bad guys, just like they were doing before, when they were picked up on the battlefield and brought to Guantanamo in the first place. So many of us believe they never should have been released, and we just sent a letter to the president to make sure that you work with the Qataris. We don't want these 5 guys going back to the battlefield, engineering plans to kill American and NATO and our NATO allies.
Well, what do you know about them?
We know that they've been back. Once they got to Qatar, that they have been in constant communication with some of their old pals.
What about this whole issue of Guantanamo? Do you think it ought to be closed down?
No, I've long been on the record saying that we need to leave Guantanamo open. I think one of the tragedies is that we've been relying more on drone strikes, which is a very effective tool, don't get me wrong, and we need to have it in our arsenal. But when you go out and you vaporize our opponents, it makes it, and you're not willing to bring them to places like Guantanamo and get actionable intelligence from them, it makes it harder to understand the enemy, thus harder to defeat the enemy.
The big thing in Congress right now, the trade agreement that's pending, where do you come down on that?
Look, I believe it is imperative for us, for our national security interests, to quickly pass trade promotion authority, because you can then move on to the Trans-Pacific Partnership and an agreement with our European allies. If you can bring those trade agreements together, you will have 2/3 of the world's economy under the same trade agreement, which allows for fair and free trade, unlike what we have now.
All right. Mr. Chairman, it's certainly nice to have you. We hope you'll come back many times. And we'll be right back.